What is your scariest true story? Serious. Story 1. True story time. I was about 4 or 5 years old and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer and my mom had a window open in her room, which was directly behind the bed, above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the door frame of my mom's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3-4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the door frame and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the first floor and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed and we were able to start screaming for help and someone called 911. The police came but didn't see any signs of forced entry, only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. The strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night, with the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. Story 2. A terrifying, but true story I experienced when I was 12. I moved to my dad's when I was 10 and didn't know anyone in the area, except for the family my dad was friends with. Single mom with 3 kids. Luckily there was a girl a couple years older than me, 12 at the time I met her, and we got to know each other a little over a couple years. We weren't close, but ended up having the same friends. One night my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work, which is where this gets terrifying and sad. Her mother has been helping this one lady through her work, and got to know her fairly well. She found out her sister was in a mental institution and was let out recently. The night Rob is hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door. My friend thought it was just their mom. She knocks a certain way when coming in, and answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there and he took off through the window to his house down the road. He never thought twice about it. Wasn't her mom. It was the sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to her sister where her family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where I don't know details and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbors to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas, decapitated her and left her body, naked in a bathtub, hid her head. They had to look through the presents and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. Story 3. I was sitting in my room, after getting out of work, on the 2nd floor. Little bro is downstairs watching TV. The dog is in the hallway outside my door sleeping. All of a sudden dog starts making all kinds of racket, jumping round, barking, clacking nails, howling. I go to get up to see what's up and I hear, "Oh, that's a good girl," in a male voice. It didn't sound like little bro, so I go, "Oh, you're home early," thinking it is my dad's friend or roomie as I open the door. Soon as I'm out there is no one at all but the dog wagging her tail staring at the empty end of the hallway. Little bro comes upstairs to yell at me for getting his dog riled up. Said he heard the same voice thinking it was me or our roommate. We did a once over of the house with my butterfly knife and his BB gun and there was nobody. Still gives me the spooks to this day. Story 4. I posted this last night in a similar Ask Reddit thread. A few years ago, I was home alone at night time. I was watching TV in the living room when I heard the doorbell ring. Whenever I hear the doorbell ring, especially when I'm home alone, I am cautious to answer it. I walk up to the peephole without turning on the porch light, so they don't know if anyone is actually home or not, and look through. It's really dark but I can see a small figure, more like black blob. IDK its definite shape and had to be around 3 to 4 feet, doing like a dancing motion, dipping down and oscillating its arms outward. Think of a person moving their arms like wings gracefully. It was dark outside but this figure was more opaque so I could see this going on. After a few seconds I stopped looking through the peephole because it was too freaky to look at. I regained some courage and looked back through and whatever it was gone. To this day I still don't know what that was and I get freaked out thinking about it. Story 5. My ex-wife had several weird experiences. I'll just relate this one. I'm at work one day when she calls me out of the blue. We were still married at the time. She usually did not call me during the day because she worked the night shift. She tells me to call my friend Danny and make sure he and his family are okay. When I ask why, she tells me that she had a dream but can't remember it, but that I should call Danny and make sure he's okay. So I call Danny and check in with him. I tell him about my wife's dream. He's mildly amused but tells me that he and his family are fine and to thank my wife for her concern. I call her back and let her know all is well. She's very dubious when she hears the news. I found out later that within half an hour of my phone call to Danny, he got another call from his uncle in Florida to tell him that Danny's son had hanged himself. Story 6. Alrighty, this is the late 80s early 90s. I was around 6-7 years old. I am at home with my sister who is 14-15 at the time. We grew up in a small Texas town. Everyone knows everybody. We are home alone this particular night, and my folks let my sister babysit me frequently. We always got along due to our age gap. Anyway, it is about 8 p.m. in the winter. Deserts get pretty damn cold, so it is dark and we are in the common room since that is where the TV was. Watching 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or Hard Copy or some crap. Those 1-hour news pieces on CBS that chronicle large crimes in depth. Trafficking, murders, kidnappings and the like. Basically a gritty Lifetime special. This one was a typical story. Guy next door that was quiet went on a rampage in his next door neighbor's house, mutilating them and kidnapping their young daughter. Well, the thing about our house common room is the door leading to the backyard was a large glass door on a wall of floor to ceiling windows. Nothing but blackness beyond it unless you have the back light on. We did not. The front door is on the other side of the room with a small entryway. This is a solid door, so you cannot see what is beyond it, with a glass storm door on the outside of it. About 45 minutes into the show, they are talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy and bam bam bam. Front door bangs like crazy. We jump the fudge up and scream like banshees. Dead silence now. The only lights on in the house are the kitchen down the hall from the common room we were in and the light from the TV. We start thinking something on the porch. We had some planters and a rocking chair out there. Had simply blown against the door. This was West Texas. Crazy strong winds out that way. Well, a minute or two of silence and us holding each other post-adrenaline overdose passes. Just when we are about to declare everything is safe, we hear the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Fudge. Someone had to have opened that door to be able to bang on the front door like that. Crap. We are both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor where we had been watching TV. My sister crawls over to the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn that metal dial to switch it off, which it does with a mildly loud thong. Now it is just us in a room dimly lit by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed with my frozen and my sister still crouched by the now off TV, but we kept making eye contact, then looking at the front door. I remember this part vividly. I am on my knees sitting on my feet, then I turn around to look at the back wall of windows and glass door. We hear and I see the back door knob turn. It was locked on the knob but not dead bolted. It rattles slightly as if someone is gently trying the handle. Neither of us make a sound, just held breath. Then bam bam loud as all hell. Someone is trying to force the door open, just jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of windows is vibrating violently and I can see with each jerk of the door how my slight reflection gets fuzzy, then clear, then fuzzy. My sister flips her crap and screams bloody murder. I am still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, throws her mattress and anything she can in front of her door. Thankfully she had remembered the phone, one of those ungodly heavy beige plastic long metal antenna portable phones. We still had to direct dial the sheriff there and in her panic didn't remember the number. She just hit redial on the phone. It was one of her friends and she tells them in broken gasps that someone is trying to get into our house and needs to get there right fudging now. The profanity sticks out here more than anything else. Who knows? Young brain. I am curled up on the floor and cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friend and her parents driving up to the house. We never did find out who was at the door or why. There were no signs of anything happening but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom of the back door that we could not remember if they were there beforehand or not. Nothing like that has happened to me or her since, but for damn sure we never forget to lock a door after that. Story 7. About 5 years ago, my mom started dating a guy she met on a dating site. That part is fine. I had recently started dating the woman who would later become my wife and we had met online. I'll just refer to her as my wife for this story. Anyway, my wife and I never really liked this guy. We didn't think he was mean or anything like that. Just a little creepy. He was quiet. He kept his eyes closed a lot, and occasionally said odd things like offering my wife a chocolate and then popping one in his mouth, closing his eyes, and moaning as he let it melt in his mouth. One time my wife and I were visiting my mom but she got called into work, so we waited at her house. Her boyfriend was over but he spent the entire several hours just hanging out in her bedroom with the door closed. Just before Christmas, my mom and this guy started having some difficulties. My wife and I were visiting her for the holidays and she dropped all of her problems on us and we listened carefully and told her our opinions and suggested that she would be better off without him. She already had her mind made up, though, and decided to break up with him. On Christmas Eve, we spent the night at my mom's and got up early on Christmas morning to visit my dad at his house. We didn't plan to spend the night at my dad's, but we got snowed in, which was actually a nice Christmas surprise. The next day we left as soon as we could get through the snow and my wife suggested that we stop by my mom's house on the way so that we could see if she was okay. My wife just had a really bad feeling about my mom's now ex-boyfriend. My mom's car was in the driveway, but that doesn't mean much because she lives close enough to work that she often walks and it hadn't snowed in her town. She also never locks her door, which drives me crazy, so we let ourselves in. That's when we see blood oozing out of the refrigerator's water dispenser. It had filled up the spill container and was leaking onto the floor and had made a puddle. My wife screamed and I freaked out. I fully expected to see my mom's head in the freezer. I nervously opened the freezer to find a bag of frozen cherries that had been opened. crammed into the freezer so that it fell onto the ice dispenser and melted. TLDR thought my mom was decapitated by her creepy ex-boyfriend. Story 8. I used to work as a bouncer, and on one slow night a guy tried to come into the club after last call, which we don't allow, and after arguing with me for a few minutes he just tried to push his way into the door. I grabbed him by his dreads and threw him back into the street, and this pissed him off pretty good. He started telling me I was a dead man and that he was going to his trunk, something I'd heard dozens of times, and it was always just talk. He turned right around and hit the button on his keychain, and his car was literally parked right behind him, 10 feet in front of me. I look around and there's not a single other car or person out other than he and I, and 2 other customers who were standing next to me smoking. It was very strange because it was the main street at bar closing time, usually swarming with people and police. He pulled a gun out of the trunk and stuck it right in my face, and this was the first time I'd ever had this happen to me. I had often thought about a situation like this and joked about it with coworkers, saying that I'd take a guy down or knock him out if it ever happened. Nope. Just pants fudgeting fear. Luckily I had nothing in my bowels to vacate, because I certainly would have if that wasn't the case. While trying to keep my voice from cracking, I used one arm to push the other 2 customers inside the door, and said, "You're on camera, get the fudge out of here." I backed up, locked the door, and puked in the bathroom for the next 15 minutes while the cops were called. Scariest moment of my life.